Welcome. We are Neil,
Luke and Dave.
340-somethings reminiscing on the runners and riders of 90s guitar music.
We look at the bands who soundtracked our youth on both sides of the pond and interview some of our heroes from the bands that defined a generation.
You'll hear about the good, the bad and the ugly of 90s guitar music.
This podcast is Stupid and Contagious. Hello and welcome to episode 104 of the Stupid and Contagious podcast. Thanks for sticking around for the last couple of weeks as we take our summer break and let Dave recharge his batteries. I hope you've enjoyed Luke's interview so far. Just a couple more of these and then we'll be resuming normal services with interviews of all of your favourite 90s artists. If you are watching this, then please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel and get involved in the comments. And if you are listening, then please do rate and review and share it with your friends. That's the best way for people to find the podcast. If you could just give it a share. If we post anything on Facebook, give that a share too. We really appreciate it. We've got a stupid app. Just go onto your iPhone store and download the stupid app. Takes you from the podcast to the mixtape seamlessly. So Dave put that together for you. So download that one. And if you want to sponsor the podcast, then it's stupid and contagious podcast at gmail.com. If you're a band or if you want to give someone a shout out or got something to promote or a charity, then get in touch and you can sponsor the podcast. Jeordie will tell you all about it. He'll do a much better job than I could ever attempt to. And he'll let you know exactly what the charity does, how you can get involved, and how you can contact them if you need to contact them. So definitely have a listen to this episode. So I've been meaning to get him on for a while. I personally have had my struggles with mental health all through my adult life, really. I've got it under control. I've sought help and it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? But I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat. So definitely have a listen to this one. So yeah, he's a lovely guy. We have a lovely chat about music, mental health, and mental health within the music community. So definitely stick around for the interview. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Many of you may relate to what we're talking about, and you might even want to get in touch with Tonic music at some point. So we talk all about it. So enough about me rabbiting on. Let's just get straight into the interview. Here's Jeordie Shenton from Tonic Music. Enjoy. Jeordie, thanks so much for coming on. Where are you zooming in from today? We'd like to know where everyone is.
Yeah, so I'm based in the east of England, so in the sort of Constable country area. So I guess most famous would be in the home of Blur, I would say.
Indeed.
So yeah, we're very
90s
proud to
reference.
yeah, exactly. Perfect band. And there's a nice mural. I think it's a mural of Damon Albarn in a shop in the nearby. So it's yeah, I guess that's what's most favorite. I guess I describe it as being in between Blur and either Nick Kershaw or Cradle of Filth, really would be the best way to explain that.
Great examples. I like a bit Nick Kershaw myself.
Yeah.
Before we get on to talking about Tonic music, you're into music yourself, right? I read a bit about in your bio, you're quite into music. So what sort of stuff do you listen to, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in classic sort of listening to everything kind of spiel. Big collection of music. I'm a CD person. So I guess
right.
I am, and I'm a bit out of fashion at the moment, but I'm very much, I like a CD because you can put it on your iPod. So I'm a bit old fashioned. Even an iPod's a bit old fashioned. I like a CD because you can put it on your iPod and you can also, put it in your stereo. So listen to everything from rock, hip hop, dance, modern, today's music, probably further back, 40s, 50s. But I was born in the 90s, born in the early 90s.
Yeah,
so
you're younger than our standard demographic, but
yeah, but I guess I grew up. My mum was a massive music fan, or is still a massive music fan. But growing up, she'd be playing, I guess, her tapes of
cassettes,
90s music. So if we're talking UK based, Oasis, Blur, Pulp, Suede, The Verve, Radiohead. If you go more
Yeah.
the US, you've got kind of Nirvana and Pearl Jam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's the sort of
So
thing
a
we
good
cover.
mix, really. Do you know what I mean? Elastica as well. I often think Elastica are forgotten about.
Ah,
It shouldn't be.
yeah, my co-host Luke is his favorite band from the 90s. He loves Elastica. Yeah.
It's a great band. I mean, there's so many great bands from the 90s. I think it's a very, and I feel we're in a real zone at the moment. And I guess it's triggered by the Oasis tour and the shows
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
doing. There's this real kind of nostalgia for the 90s. I myself recently saw James supported by
Yeah,
Shed
yeah, nice.
7. So again, you got that
Yeah,
double 90s.
yeah.
It's a fantastic era to kind of discuss, really.
Yeah, I mean, well, we obviously love it, but yeah, it's definitely making a resurgence. Well, it has made a resurgence. Yeah, like you say,
Yeah.
the Oasis gigs are ongoing at the moment.
It
Yeah,
goes
shed.
beyond Britpop, doesn't it? It certainly does go beyond Britpop because I think,
Yeah.
Britpop, you talk about the four Britpop bands, but then you've got bands like Manic Street Preachers. It's like, no,
Mhm.
not, wouldn't really put that in Britpop, but
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
massive band. Um, yeah, wonderful time.
Yes, good times indeed. Right, so let's talk about what we got you on for. Let's talk about Tonic Music. Can you tell us a bit about it and what it does and how you got involved with it, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so Tonic Music, we are a registered charity establishing good mental health within music communities. So we were founded in 2012, originally based in Portsmouth, and has since
Right, yeah.
grown into a national charity. So by music communities, I mean, if you picture kind of an aerial view of Glastonbury Festival, a classic Glastonbury Festival picture,
Yeah,
we've got the
yeah.
pyramid stage.
Gotcha.
Essentially, we provide tailored mental health support to anyone who's in that photo who's aged 18 or over and resides in the UK. So we have two main
Right.
programs. We've got Tonic Rider, which provides mental health support to anyone who works in music. So any music industry, whether that's musicians, crew, managers, agents,
Hmm.
venue staff, festival staff. And then we also have the Never Mind a Stigma program, which is tailored mental health support for music fans and hobbyist musicians. So really,
Okay,
we're
right, yeah.
providing support for those who professionally engage in music and for those who recreationally engage in music.
Yeah, brilliant. So how does it work? How do people get involved with, how do people find you if they've got problems with their mental health or sort of how's it come about? How do bands sort
Yeah.
of end up working with you and that?
So we provide four levels of mental health support on the programs. So at this kind of first level, we got therapy sessions, so psychotherapy and counseling. We then got peer groups, so we do peer support groups. We do album clubs for music fans. We have the skills workshops, which are kind of the psych ed sort of works. So for the industry side, sort of performance anxiety workshops. On
Hmm.
the never mind the stigma side, we've got kind of like gig anxiety, festival survival, and then we do training courses, so mental health first aid, suicide first aid, like everything we offer is facilitated by our members of staff who are mental health practitioners from the world of music, so psychotherapists, counselors, and everything we provide is online. So you don't have to go
Brilliant.
into London or Manchester or wherever to access services. All the groups are facilitated via video call format. Still same process as it would be in person, but just without the kind of the commute and the cost and the additional kind of effort you need to go to.
Yeah.
So, and the registration is really simple. So we have a website, tonicmusic.co.uk. And then when you go onto the website, it will show Tonic Rider and Never Mind a Stigma. You click onto the program that's relevant to you, and then you can register from the website. And it's a short registration form. And then everyone who registers has a one-to-one consultation appointment beforehand. So they have
Hmm.
a 1 hour session with one of our mental health team to go through any additional needs, unmet needs, just to ensure that their participation in the program is as safe and as wonderful as it can be.
Oh, brilliant. So presumably artists just contact you direct then, right? So
Yeah, so you'll tend to find they'll go on the website or via social media, so like Facebook, Instagram, all those socials, and then just register via that link, and then away we go. So there's no phone line, there's no requirement to email us. It can just be done simply by that form. Of course, we do have people who do email, but it's as simple as that because we want to make it as as easy as it can, not having to go through multiple hoops to get support.
Yeah.
So it's very streamlined how we do it. But we have participants on the programs who they've been engaged with the programs for say 4 or 5 years. There's no kind of like deadline. There's no kind of that's it. You can't receive any more support. People can kind of dip in and out when they need to, and that's the best form of mental health support is having that kind
Mm.
of service that's accessible when required.
Yeah, yeah, sure. How does it work with the fans then? So
Mm.
how would it differ from like just contacting a normal psychotherapist or whatever? How does your sort of
Yeah.
program differ?
So good question, because there's actually so with the music fan side, the Never Mind the Stigma program,
Yeah,
what we offer is we offered a tailored mental health support approach to how would a music fan benefit from this support. So hypothetically, that
yeah,
program is open to anyone in the general public because all you got to
yeah,
do is
yeah,
sort of say,
yeah.
I'm a music fan. And what we're talking 95%, 97% of people in the UK are probably music fans, of course, of
I would have
different
thought so.
genres. You would have
Yeah,
thought so, wouldn't you?
yeah.
So you register for the program, and it's about the services we offer on that program are tailored for music fans. So we run mental health album clubs, so a bit like a book club, but
Mm,
for
yeah.
albums, where each week you're talking about an album in reflection towards your mental health. And so we have our psychotherapists facilitate those. And this year we've done different genres. So we did punk, rock, ska, and indie. And again, offer an
Yeah,
opportunity to
brilliant.
really talk about mental health, but using music as that kind of tool.
Mm,
We also do a record reflection group, which is more longer term. It's 12 weeks. And that's more about participants bringing a song that they want to talk about as opposed to
oh,
having an
amazing.
album that's set.
Yeah.
And the workshops we do are focused on being a music fan. So we do festival survival workshops, so how to navigate a festival in terms of your mental health, gig
Mm,
anxiety, so reducing anxiety about going to gigs. And we do a music for mental health workshop, so how to use music for your mental health. The idea with Never Mind the Stigma, certainly at the first stage, is that it's for music fans, not necessarily people who play music, but actually people who just engage in music, because there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of support around kind of guitar workshops and drumming workshops. So it kind of requires you being able to play music. But not all music fans want to play music.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of music fans who just their engagement is listening to music.
Yeah,
So that's how we've
absolutely.
developed this program, and it's kind of had its first pilot year over the last 12 months, and we're looking to extend that. So it's really very much about how the service is and what the activities are, because it could be quite easily that we did a program where we said it's for music fans, and then actually the services themselves are just general
Yeah,
services. And
that's
actually
what
for us, it
I
was
thought.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, no, for us, it was about really making it tailored. So next year we'll be looking about how we can change the album clubs and the record reflection. How can we sort of address, kind of other genres, for example, or other styles of music? And I think that's really important. I mean, book clubs are really popular, aren't they, across the UK? But you
Mm,
don't tend to get
absolutely.
album clubs so much,
No.
sometimes, and particularly ones that are facilitated by mental health professionals where you're reflecting on your mental health. And I think that that's a really key aspect. So, for example, the punk album club, you'd have, say, a Clash album, and you're reflecting on
Mm.
that and how what that means to you. Powerful, powerful stuff. I think that's a really key aspect.
Yeah, and they're group sessions, obviously they're album listening sessions. So
Yeah.
is that all done online as well? So
Yeah,
people
all
just
done
sort of
online,
zoom
all
in.
done online. So
Yeah.
it's just registering and then tuning in through Zoom. Again, the beauty of that is
Mm.
the kind of connections you make with music fans across the UK. So it's not
I was
just
gonna
about
say,
kind
yeah.
of in the same town where you may know people. If you have an album club in a certain town, you probably expect that the same people are going to attend who are kind
Mm.
of, the core music fans. But really this enables people to be able to form WhatsApp groups, to keep connections going, beyond the groups, and actually maybe even meeting at festivals, for example, and actually going to gigs
Yeah.
together and
Yeah,
having that
yeah.
kind of opportunity. And that's the powerful thing. We're in a world where we've got social media, and so people seem to be connected more easily, but actually to some extent that social media can make people feel a bit more
Very
distant.
isolated. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's a
absolutely.
strange time in that regard. So that's how that works. And again, another thing we're looking at, so we're looking at extending our support for hobbyist musicians. So
Mm,
again, hobbyist musicians, they will go and perform. They will go and do, say, choirs at a festival. They may do open mics, but no interest or desire to kind of work professionally in music. So that requires a
mm,
different form of tailored mental health support. So again, we're looking at developing performance anxiety workshops for hobbyist musicians because it's different to professional or
mm.
working
Yeah.
musicians. So we're looking at that as well. And that's a really important aspect of what we're doing.
Oh, it all sounds great. That's something I like because I've suffered with my own mental health issues, well, ongoing as most people's are. But this sounds great. You become part of a community at the same time. It
That's the
just
key word,
sounds
isn't
like
it?
a wonderful thing.
Community is key word. That's why we use the word music communities, because we want to see it
Yeah,
beyond the kind of term music industry or industries, and it's really important. From what we know, we believe we're the only registered charity providing tailored mental health support to both people who work in music and music fans. Other
yeah,
charities, it's one or the other, but for
yeah,
us,
yeah,
it's about supporting both. That's why we have tailored resources for both groups. And also, we do our mental health lounges both backstage and front of house at festivals across the UK. Because it's
yeah,
important, without the kind of people working in music, you wouldn't have the music fans, and without the music fans, you wouldn't have the kind of the industry that's been built. So it is very much that community aspect.
yeah, yeah. That's brilliant. Um, what are the pitfalls of being a musician, would you say? What's
Yeah.
yeah, because obviously, well, so you've designed a specific tonic music designed specifically for music and musicians. So why do you think that there is sort of the whole mental health issues with musicians?
Yeah, so let's look at it from the point of working musicians. So, and when we say working musicians, we mean your internationally stadium touring artists such as Oasis to your pub circuit playing musician that's doing
Yeah,
the kind of the seed venues as is now being used, so pubs
yeah,
and kind of social clubs, all working musicians. Some earning music money from music full time, others more sporadically. What are the pitfalls? Well, the first thing that always comes to my mind is being a working musician, particularly if you're a songwriter that performs, means that you have experienced both performance anxiety stressors and creative anxiety stressors. So you experience what used to be termed stage fright when performing, and you can experience kind of creative blocks when required to write a song or even a composition. Now, other forms of art don't necessarily require both those elements. If you're a
yeah,
painter, you may
yeah,
have creative pressures, but not performing pressures. If you're a dancer, there's more performance pressures, probably far less creative pressures because kind of, you're not necessarily creating the whole dancer in itself. Of course, it differs across the board, but I think with
yeah,
musicians, there is that double-edged sword. So that's the first aspect. You then have kind of linked to that physical pressures of performing in terms of an instrument or in terms of vocally. You get vocal issues, hearing issues, musculoskeletal. It is
yeah,
quite a strenuous job physically. You also have as well what we call maybe the music industry. So the social pressures, the cultural pressures, the financial pressures, the workplace pressures, some of the key aspects here tend to be negative feedback. So
mm,
it's not
yeah, yeah,
like you have a job and the feedback's always positive. A lot of time it's negative feedback, whether that's the press, whether that's social media, whether that's with an audition,
yeah.
whether that's with
By
your
design, a lot of
manager.
the time, right? Yeah,
Of
yeah, yeah,
course, yeah, even
yeah.
audience members. And we can see this generally. You can look at examples, say like the X Factor, which is like a
Mm,
example of a public audition, to all, the media and the way media may criticize an album. I mean, how many albums got like a 1 star from a certain magazine, and
yeah, yeah.
years later it's like it's in the top 500 greatest albums of all time? You're talking about negative feedback constantly.
Mm,
Social media's made that a lot worse. And this, of course, ties in with identity. So
mm,
if you take the example of, say, an electrician, someone who's got all the qualifications you need to be an electrician, spent what, 2, 3, 5 years trained to be an electrician, Is being an electrician necessarily part of their identity? Probably not. Probably not.
Probably
Probably it's
not.
about clocking off at 5, 6 o'clock, and then, you know, that's it. You're clocked off
Yeah,
work.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You can go past, say, a house where you've done the wiring, but you're not necessarily feeling that emotional attachment. You may not even remember that you've worked at that house. If you take a musician, every song you write, every performance you do, every recording you do is part of your identity. And that's why the negative feedback can be so powerful when that's received. We shouldn't really
Mm,
talk about a musician career. We should talk about musician identity because that's what it is. This portfolio career means that you do different jobs, whether that's a band that you're in, whether you're a session musician, whether you're playing at a pub gig, and that's even musicians who work part-time or more sporadically, it's still part of the identity. So it's a real key thing. And what feeds in that identity is often what's forgotten about is these kind of pre-existing, pre-music career stressors and factors. So in particular, musicians can possess personality traits that not only help them with their career in music, but actually can lead them to potentially be more vulnerable to poor mental health.
mm. Yeah,
Namely,
yeah, yeah.
perfectionism as a trait. If you're a perfectionist, it can make you a stronger musician.
Mm,
Neuroticism, so if you're more in tune with negative emotions, you might be able to write that song that kind of gets to number one. And also sensation seeking. If you possess that as a trait, you can then go on stage and do the performance you need to do. But again, neuroticism can lead into poor mental health through more, kind of depression, anxiety,
mm.
and sensation seeking, more kind of risk taker behaviors such as substance use and self harm. And
Yes,
alongside
yes.
that, we have childhood trauma. And that's something that's not discussed a lot in terms of musicians. You have a young musician, they experience maybe bullying at school or difficulties at home. They write a song about that. Nowadays, they write a song, they perform a song, they put it on TikTok, and then they'll get
Mm,
famous. But then that
mm,
means you then have to do a recording of that song and you have to perform that song every night and you have to hear that song every day. So what that does is, yes, those kind of negative experiences can kind of help you with a music career because they're kind of their influence for songs you're going to create. But of course, again, there's the impact that has on mental health. So that's how these factors all tie in. There are a lot of pitfalls, but I think it's important to remember as well. There's a lot in the media at the moment, a lot of research that's out there that's kind of saying the music industry is evil, working in music is bad.
mm.
Let's
Yeah.
not forget it is a positive career. It's a difficult career because it's very much, a pyramid. There's only so many artists that can perform Wembley
Absolutely.
Stadium. And
Yeah.
that's because it's not like sport where, you hit 40 and you retire. The Rolling Stones are in their 80s and they're still playing Wembley Stadium, Hyde Park. So they're not, it doesn't work in that kind of
No,
way.
no, no, it
Cyclical.
doesn't.
We're getting more and more of a bottleneck. But it's
Mm,
an amazing career. There's many positives, and that's why I like the word you use about pitfalls. It doesn't mean they're a certainty, but they're kind of from a more psych ed point of view. These are things that we want to prevent. So we want to educate musicians, particularly young musicians, about these pitfalls and how to address them, how to maybe avoid them.
that's brilliant. You touched on it there in your little chat there, but the whole substance abuse thing. Why do you
Mm,
think that is so? I mean, I'm not, especially particularly in the 90s, which we talk about. Obviously, you had the grunge scene, loads of
yeah.
suicides, heroin overdoses. Why do you think? Is it just because they've got so much time and money when they get to this to be popular? Or do you think there's just
Mhm.
something in the psyche of a musician that sort of takes them down those paths? I don't know. It's just
Yeah. So at Tonic Music, we do a substance use awareness workshop where we talk about a lot of these factors.
mm,
Myself, I'm doing a PhD on substance use amongst working
right,
musicians.
right,
So I'm
right.
looking
Yeah.
at what all these factors are, and essentially why are working musicians more susceptible to engaging in substance use. So let's look at it as substance use rather than straight to kind of addictions. Look at it as
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
behavior of
yeah.
using alcohol, smoking, illicit drugs, misuse of prescription drugs,
Mm,
even over-the-counter medication. What is going on? Why is this? A lot of people say, oh, it's the fame and the money. if that's the case, why are we not seeing this pattern with sports stars? We do a
Mm.
little bit, but not so much. Why would that
Yeah,
be? Or
that's good.
maybe in
That's a good point.
sport, there's a kind of barriers to that you fail a drug test, for example, and it
Yeah,
impacts you physically. So if you're not, if you've had a night of heavy drinking, you can't go on the football pitch the next day.
yeah,
So, okay, interestingly, we know that there's some industries that kind of naturally have barriers in place. Then we look at the arts and we look at, okay, why is it that musicians it seems to be the case and less so other artists? And we know this because research has found that musicians are more susceptible to dying from what's called risk-related causes. And then when looking
mm,
at overdoses of celebrities, musicians come out on top as the most
yeah, yeah,
represented.
yeah.
Why is that? Well, some of the factors I discussed a minute ago are part of that kind of the blender of the stresses that's coming in. I raised the point about sensation seeking, really important
Mm,
because high trait sensation seeking leads into substance use. High trait neuroticism can lead into substance use. And we know the musician population score highly on these traits.
mm,
And then the factors at play, well, if you think about all the stresses I mentioned, both the kind of the occupational, the industry, the identity, you're factoring that in that in the world of music, there are no barriers to using substance use, at least in the
yeah.
UK and the US. In other countries, yes, there is. In other countries, say, for example, Japan and Korea,
That's true.
illicit
Yeah,
substances means you get
yeah.
cancelled. So actually, what would that mean that there's lower substance use there? Potentially. But looking at the UK and the US, there's no barriers. In sometimes it can be encouraged to engage in
I
substance
was
use.
gonna say, I was
So
gonna
if
say,
drinking alcohol
yeah,
leads to a better performance,
yeah,
then go for it. If using illicit drugs leads to a better album, then go for it. The people around those
mm,
musicians are not going to stop that because, if we think about all the great songs that there are, how many have been created or even recorded under the influence of substances?
yeah.
So
We had a
there's
similar conversation about that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so you're talking about industries that not only don't have restrictions to substance use, but potentially not necessarily in a direct way, but maybe kind of encourage it, or it's kind of, it's not frowned upon. It's like, one more drink to get on stage.
Mm,
But interestingly, there seems to be a trend now with younger musicians that there's a rejection of alcohol, a rejection of illicit drugs, and not necessarily through straight edge culture, for example. It's actually just whether the younger generation, not just of musicians, but generally are not engaging in those substances, potentially that's
I
what's
think
going
so.
on.
Yeah.
But does that mean that they may be engaging in other substances that are less
Mm,
traditional within the world of music? So, talking about CBD, talking about, for
mm,
example, caffeine in different forms, nicotine in
mm,
different forms, particularly vaping or pouches, for example.
yeah.
Also looking at kind of modafinil as a substance, maybe misuse of ADHD medication like Ritalin. So it
Mm,
could be that the more kind of alcohol and what was kind of seen as illicit street drugs may be rejected, but maybe kind of the misuse of prescription medication in particular might be something that's going on because it's maybe seen as cleaner because
mm,
it's seen as medication. So that seems to maybe be what's going on, but it'll be interesting with my PhD as it goes on to see why that would be. But it is again that kind of these blender of factors that we don't get so much in other industries. Another point to kind of raise as well, music is so ubiquitous, it's so widespread. So if you walk into a shop, you usually will hear music. If you go down the Camden Market, you will hear music of all different genres. Music is everywhere. Other art
mm,
forms are not. You don't go into a newsagent's and see a painting on a wall, but you will hear
yeah,
the
that's true.
radio being played. You will hear Radiohead or Oasis or whoever's on the radio.
Mm,
So music culturally is so essential in the UK, so important that that's kind of in itself an additional pressure because of the kind of spotlight we put on famous working musicians. I
mm,
mean, you look when Oasis announced their reunion and their tour, I mean, it nearly shut down the internet. It literally
yeah,
shut
yeah.
down the UK. I mean, everyone was in this queue of like 1 million people wanting tickets. You
Mm,
just don't get that in other forms of art, even potentially sport. There's something about music that's so important to culture. And again, that's where the identity aspect ties in, why it's so impactful, particularly on the working musicians. Very, very interesting. And very much is why there is this need for a mental health in music academic field is because of these stresses.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Just going back to something you touched on. Well, it's just something that I want to sort of expand upon. So maybe naively, I often think because I've been in a few bands and stuff. I've written a few songs, and I always think when you're in that sort of drunken stupor or whatever, it's easier to
Mhm.
sort of the songs kind of flow in that sort of vessel. So if everyone was sort of clean living and stuff, do you think music would suffer, I guess? Obviously, you're going to say no because we're trying to stop that. But
It,
do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Might just
I know
being
what
a
you're
bit,
saying. It's that kind of question of, I mentioned it earlier, didn't I? So if you took away all the songs that were influenced by substance
yes,
use in any
yeah,
form, what songs
yeah,
would you be left? I mean,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
you probably wouldn't be left with any.
No,
The key point is it's never about complete abstinence. Of course, if people want to be abstinent,
yeah,
that's fine. It's about
yeah,
moderation. So really, we have to accept that substance use is a part of life. People will engage
mm,
in heavy alcohol use, in illicit drug use, etc., etc. You know,
yeah,
and we're looking at it very much from a health point of view rather than a legal point of view. So when I discuss this, we have to accept
yeah,
it's
yeah,
part of everyday life.
yeah,
What we don't want is where it becomes problematic. So people can
mm,
engage recreationally in substance use and never experience a problem. People can engage in what would be called maybe more situational substance use, where they're using it to inspire creativity or help them with performing, and it never get to the stage of becoming a problem. Unfortunately, though, there's a number of working musicians and a number of people generally where substance use becomes a problem. It leads into more binging and then
yeah,
dependency
yeah,
behaviors, which again leads into substance use disorder. So that's the first thing is we want to be able to be at a point where it's about moderation and we can help the people who are in depths of substance use disorder and prevent people getting to the point where it becomes substance use disorder. So kind of that
yeah, yeah,
remedial preventative approach. At the
yeah,
same time, substance use always has the risk of overdose. Certain substances have a higher risk of overdose compared to
hmm
others. And that's another aspect of harm reduction that we should encourage you in the music industry is again to teaching people the skills how to reduce the risk of overdose. So I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we have no working musicians engaging in substance use and then we find out that answer. But it will be interesting to
yeah,
see what
yeah.
happens. Do you know what I
It's
mean?
more a
Because
hypothetical one, I think.
it is a hypothetical question, but I think it's important that the approach, particularly with the world of music, is never to be right. We'll have a blanket ban of any substance because it's A, it's not going to happen,
No,
and B, it what does that achieve? Well, it doesn't
yeah,
really
yeah,
achieve much. So yeah, and it'd be really interesting to kind of see what the statistics are between the UK, which still, fairly strict with substance use compared to, say, Japan and Korea, like I mentioned, about where it is about cancelling artists who,
mm,
even smoke cannabis, for example. I guess the most famous
yeah, yeah,
example was when Sir Paul McCartney went to Japan on tour. He had some cannabis in his suitcase and he was held in jail, I think, for several days. Do you know what I mean? So,
mm.
and that's kind of showing the level there. It'd be interesting to see, is there a difference between artists? You look at the world of classical music. Now,
No, that's
classical
true.
music
Yeah,
of course, doesn't celebrate substance use
yeah.
in the way that maybe rock music does, for example. But does that mean there's any less of a problem within classical music? No, because it's actually, even though it's a taboo, there is a high rate of alcohol use, high rate of illicit drug
Is
use
that
within the
true? Is it?
classical world. Yeah, without a doubt.
Right, yeah,
And you just got to go back in history. This is a historical phenomena. So this is very
mm,
much, you think of classical composers
yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
died through alcohol use
That's
in
true. A
excess.
lot of
So
them
it
are off
is.
their heads, weren't they? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is the thing. It's it does happen, but it becomes, it's of course it's not celebrated, but it also means it's not talked about, and that's the
Mm.
interesting thing. So you can see substances have different relationships with different genres and almost
I was
different
going to say,
eras.
that's it. It's not celebrated in classical music, whereas sort of Oasis with beers, cocaine
Yeah,
back in the day and all that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
just, it was just, it was just particularly the 90s. It was just that kind of
Mm.
excess. And you can see genres
Britpop was
have
terrible. Yeah,
certain genres have certain substances. So amphetamine with punk music and ecstasy with rave
mm.
music, even though the artists themselves tend to engage in multiple substances, but there always tend to be kind of one substance that's associated with it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's an intriguing subject, but I think really to flip the question, the approach is about that harm reduction approach. It's not
Yeah,
about
yeah.
eradicating substances. It's about reducing the prevalence rate of substance use disorder and substance overdose.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's a great answer. I saw that Simon Williams from Fierce Panda is like an ambassador for Tonic music. Is that right? How did he get? Because
Yes,
he's had his own struggles that he's been quite open about. How did he
yes.
get
So
involved?
he wrote a fantastic book called Pandemonium,
Yeah, yeah,
which is a really powerful book, very interesting read, very open and honest read as well.
yeah, yeah. It really
So
is.
Simon Williams, talk about the 90s. What a fantastic
Mm.
character.
Oh,
Um,
amazing guy. Yeah,
he
we
is,
had him
he
on.
is.
He's brilliant. Yeah, yeah,
Ah, see, he
yeah,
we met Simon, Steph and I, Steph, who's our CEO, Steph Langan,
yeah.
at an event, and we got talking to Simon and kind of just over the sort of months and years, it was just we would see each other at different events. Obviously, we had the similar in common of about the cause around mental health in music.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Simon with his book and talking on a lot of panels, Tonic Music with the work we do. And then really it began last year when Simon invited us to do well, it was myself and Simon we kind of almost interviewed each other at one
Oh,
of his
nice.
founder events in
Yeah.
London. Um, and that was really interesting. And just from that, we offered him the opportunity to become an ambassador because he was
Mm,
more or less a Tonic music ambassador just by highlighting our work. So he came on board as ambassador in January. We've been able to do a lot of Fierce Panda events. Before that, actually, he invited us to go on tour with Desperate Journalist with our Tonic music stand. So that was another great thing.
that's great. Yeah.
So yeah, and actually, Simon was on one of our panels. So he did a panel at Brighton Music Conference. Simon took
Mm.
part on that. So he's a fantastic ambassador, fantastic character.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. He's brilliant.
really, really, really great work. Again, he also invited us to do provide a Tonic music sound at Ash show in John Peel Centre. So it was really
Ah,
great.
brilliant.
So Ash,
Yeah.
prior to supporting the Darkness on tour, did a big show, sold out show at John Peel Centre. So we came
Mm.
along, did a Tonic music stand there. So that's been really great. And he's a real character. And I tell you what, he has so many
It really
artists
is. Yeah.
on Fierce Panda that I'm a big fan of. One of them
Mm.
actually from the same town I live in, a band called Dingus Khan,
Right,
who
right.
Ben
Yeah.
Brown fronts. Amazing band. And it was an amazing coincidence when I spoke to Simon last year at Brighton the Corners in Ipswich.
Mm.
Um, I was talking about Dingus Khan. He said, "Oh, that's Fierce Panda record." I was like, "I just didn't know."
Yeah.
And more recently, I was able to go to Latitude Festival, and I saw Hamish Hawke, whose
Mm.
last album was on Fierce Panda as well. Again, amazing
Yeah,
art.
yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
Simon's got an amazing sort of, well, not eye for me, I guess an ear for music, and just a really,
Yeah.
really great
It
guy.
really is. Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Oh, that's great. So let's go back to the sort of the industry, the music industry. Do you think it's cl cleaned itself up a little bit since the sort of 80s, 90s, or do you think they've still got a long way to go in terms of like protecting artists from themselves, basically? Or do you think it's still a
Yeah.
bit exploitative? I don't know.
It's an interesting question. So it depends what we mean by sort of cleaned up, exploitative. Let's start with the way music industries work. Naturally, music industries are a capitalist venture.
Mm,
Someone is making money out of someone else, and unfortunately, in the past 10 and 20 years, artists are making less and less money,
Mm,
whereas more executives are making more money. And,
yeah.
you talk about organizations like Live Nation, like
Mm,
Spotify,
yeah.
organizations that are making billions and billions and billions of pounds, whereas artists are continually struggling. And we're not talking
Mm,
about artists that are at the kind of grassroots or pub circuit. We're still talking about artists that are on the arena, sometimes even stadium
mm.
level, that are struggling to make
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think about the 90s when TLC, I think they said at the Grammy Awards where they said they were flat broke because
I
they'd had to
think a
pay
lot of
for
artists did.
everything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
is it any less exploitative? Probably not. I mean,
Mm,
it's an industry. The industries that are constantly changing. We're constantly seeing negative behaviors, abusive behaviors. Whether it's the kind of question you sort of leaned on about kind of clean up is that okay? So is substance use as prevalent as it once was? Possibly reduced, but has it become that really it's a case it's less celebrated, so it's actually becoming underground? And
yeah.
there's a friend of mine who wrote a book, Ian Winwood, who we were interviewed for that book. He wrote a book called Bodies, and he suggested that substance use is still prevalent. It's just it's gone a bit underground because it's not kind of culturally kind of niche to talk about substance
Yeah,
use.
yeah. It's not.
That'd be interesting
Yeah,
to see if
yeah.
my research kind of sort of supports that kind of hypothesis.
Mm,
Um, there are more mental health initiatives in terms of working in music. Obviously, we have Tonic Music. There are fellow charities within our field as well. There's a lot more therapists who are from the world of music. So our chief psychotherapist is Dr. Adam Frychek, drummer from Baby Shambles, our psychotherapist. So
yeah,
there's a lot
yeah.
more awareness about mental health in music. Does that mean that the industry itself becomes more aware and kind of acts? Yes, probably. I always say about the turning point for mental health in music, particularly in the UK, was the passing of Amy Winehouse. I think you
Right.
could
Yeah.
see it, you could see almost a change in epoch in terms
Mm,
of prior to Amy Winehouse's passing, the way the media talked about mental health, particularly of music artists, was very kind of demonizing.
mhm.
It was all kind of a mix of kind of demonizing and kind of romanticizing and to some extent making a fool of the artist as well. And you
Yeah,
can see, for
yeah.
example, Amy Winehouse, for example, Peter Doherty, who's a
I
friend
was
of
going to
Tonic
say,
Music.
look at what the press did to Pete Doherty. Do you know what I
Absolutely, that
mean?
happened. Like you said about Oasis back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Then when Amy Winehouse passed, it seemed that's when you started to see charities start offering tailored mental health support. You started to see the press be a little bit more empathetic, I
Mm,
guess. There was a lot more awareness around mental health in music, a lot less of kind of the cultural, myths around, say, the 27 Club and sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That seemed to
yeah, yeah,
reduce. So we've really had sort of 10 to 15 years of greater awareness around mental health and music, but we really need to start kind of with, swapping that awareness for action. There's still a lot more that needs to be done. If you think within that time between Amy Winehouse's passing and, this increase in research from myself, research from Dr. Adam Feincheck, research from other researchers like Lucy Heyman, for example, has done some great research around popular musicians.
yeah,
In the US with like Lloyd Berg, plenty of research. I'm always going to miss out people. You've got kind of increased research, increased services, generally increased panels and podcasts talking about mental health and music. But in that
mm,
time, who have we had that's passed away through mental health related causes? Well, we've had Chris Cornell from Soundgarden.
yeah,
We've had
yeah, yeah.
Chester
Tragic.
Bennington from Linkin
Yeah,
Park.
yeah.
We've had Keith Flint from The Prodigy. We've had Prince. We've had Tom Petty. We've had
Mm,
Avicii, Scott Hutchinson from Frightened Rabbit. You go to the world of hip hop, you've got Mac Miller, you've got Juice World,
mm,
you've got Lil Peep, Liam Payne,
yeah,
Taylor
yeah, yeah.
Hawkins from Foo Fighters. There's been a
Mm,
number of mental health related deaths, and again, I'm sure I'm missing out people from that, short but long list.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So in that time, yes, there's been great awareness, but there's still work that needs to be done.
Still a lot to be done. Yeah,
So ideally, it'd be wonderful for, Tonic Music to go, no one is experiencing poor mental health in the world of music. We can close the charity. Of course, that's never going to happen. But
no,
weirdly, I guess our goal is to actually not be needed, but we are going
yeah,
to be
yeah,
needed. So I think very much we're at the point where we've got a remedial approach. We're offering psychotherapy and counseling. We're offering peer support groups because, you know, you're talking about people working in music for 10, 20, up to kind of 50, 60 years. A
yeah,
preventative approach isn't going to work for them. They need the more kind of therapeutic
yeah,
approach. But then
yeah.
as time goes by, we can go leaning more and more towards a preventative approach where it's more educational because we're equipping younger musicians and younger people working music with the skills to kind of, like I said, negotiate those pitfalls that we discussed. So
Yeah.
long way to go. Unfortunately, music industries are so tied with capitalism. You think about
It is a business at
Spotify.
the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
It's a
again
business.
the two organizations I mentioned in particular, Spotify and Live Nation, and they're
Live
not
Nation,
the
yeah.
only organizations of their kind in terms of what they do, but they're probably the most famous.
Yeah, yeah.
Spotify, Pandora's box has been opened. What do you do? Unless all artists come off Spotify, how do you resolve that? You know, it's a really tricky one. It's easier for an artist who's got more monthly listeners to come off Spotify than it is artists that got one or two monthly listeners.
Yeah.
It's far easier. Live Nation, we buy tickets. I mentioned Latitude Festival, that's through Ticketmaster and Live
Yeah,
Nation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
95% of tickets you buy are going to be, particularly if it's an arena, a stadium show, a festival, it's going to be through Live Nation. It's going to take something more. And unfortunately,
Mm.
you know, and there's also, let's not forget the other factors that's going on in the world of music. We have the closure of grassroots music venues, we have the closure of
Mm.
grassroots festivals. Brexit, the impact of Brexit on
Yeah.
touring has been
Tour in Europe.
monumental.
Yeah.
You got, also things as well, like, you could argue the effects of kind of cancel culture and what kind of happens there. Like, how do you
Mm.
negotiate that? For some artists,
Fucking
there's a
hell,
clear
yeah.
line of who should be cancelled because it's clear. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
like, what do you do? And I guess the example I'm trying to raise there is if you're an artist that said something as a 13-year-old on Twitter that you would
Mm.
no longer support, how
Mm.
do you negotiate that? That suddenly comes out, you didn't even know you still had that social media account. So there are a
Yeah.
lot of things that are fairly unique to the world of music as well. There's always new challenges. Social media, the last 10,
Yeah,
20
I was
years, social
gonna,
media is a new challenge. The next
yeah.
challenge, I think, is going to be AI. How do we, how
Okay.
do we, how do we negotiate AI? I mean, I don't know lots about AI. I certainly don't think there should be AI artists on Spotify at all. I mean,
No.
or anywhere, because that's just going to be the most damaging thing to the world of music. But then what
Mm.
about artists that kind of use AI in their songs? Where's the kind of
Yeah, where's the
morals
line?
within that? Where's the line? Because
Mm.
and it's the same argument that when it went from acoustic to electrified and amplified instruments, from amplified instruments to using more computer-based technology, there's always been these things of, oh, that's not real music, but AI is
Mm.
going to pose the challenge. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
really, really interesting one, it's something we're going to have to negotiate now because it's happening now. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is.
so
Yeah.
how do you do that? Because what it could do is if people's music needs are satisfied by AI artists, it not only kills the recording industry in terms of human musicians, but the
Mm.
live music industry as well, because it just means that people don't want to go to live music because they're just quite happy listening
Yeah.
to AI. It's a very, very strange concept, and it takes
It
someone with a lot more
is. It
intelligence
is.
around AI to discuss. But you can see it's definitely a big
Mm.
fear for musicians,
Well, yeah, it definitely needs to be monitored, that's for sure. And
without
something
a doubt.
needs to be sort of some caps need to be put on it. Yeah, going back to social media that you touched on there. I mean, it's difficult for artists now, right? Because we all know that it's not healthy to be on social media too
Mm.
much. We all know that that's not good for you. But if you're an artist trying to promote yourself, you have to be on it, don't you? So you're
Yeah.
always forced into the world of social media, whether you like it or not,
Well,
which
if
is
you think about, so UK Music did a report about 5 years ago. I think it's Music by Numbers, I think it was called, and it
mm,
showed the four areas that musicians kind of make money from. The first was like compositions and songwriting.
mm,
The second was recorded output, and the third was live performances. So these are the three
mm.
traditional areas we know musicians are supposed to make income from. I'm going to say, you should, be
Yeah.
remunerated for your work. They had the fourth one about branding and image of the musician.
Mm,
Now, of course, some of that in the past has been around merch and been around generally, interviews and stuff like that. But
yeah.
now with social media, music artists have to be on social media 24/7. They have
Mm.
to show what they're cooking for dinner. They have to promote their next
Yeah,
album,
that's what I
promote their
mean.
next
Yeah.
show. They have to respond to what's going on politically in the world. Like I said,
Mm.
negotiating what is the wrong and right thing to say, and how do you do that? So that's an enormous pitfall. It's enormous, an unhealthy behavior to be on social media. Again, some artists
Mm.
luckily will have a PR team that do that, but we're talking again more
Yeah,
grassroots
the
artists that
smaller
have to do
artists,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, they have to do it themselves. They have to do videos. And that's the other
Mm.
thing as well. You can't, it's not like where it was originally where you did like a post, like, oh, please come to my show.
No,
It's
no,
like
no.
more, you have to do a video and you have to, with TikTok, it's like a 30-second video and it's, getting people interested within 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Extremely difficult. It's, it's reduced the distance between artists and their fans, but that's not always healthy because you've got the kind of question around boundaries. So again,
Mm.
fans contact an artist and then they may reveal stuff about their mental health, and the artist doesn't know how to negotiate that,
Mm.
or
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
the other way round. So you have that aspect, and there's obviously security fears around
yeah.
that.
Mm.
It makes it a lot more harder now to be kind of an anonymous artist. There are anonymous
Yes.
artists out there, particularly in the metal world. You've got Sleep Token and you've got President, who are a new band that have emerged.
Yeah, yeah, I know
Now,
President, yeah.
to some extent, if you're an anonymous artist, maybe you can protect your mental health a bit more because it means you can go to the shops potentially because you're not noticed.
Yes, that's true.
So that so
Bit like
that's why it's
Slipknot.
important that artists can be anonymous should they choose to do so. I think like Burial
Mm.
as well. 20 years ago, Burial, no one knew
Mm.
who Burial was. Um, but then there's also stories about these anonymous artists that they're almost being, for want of a word, outed. Their identity's being outed on social media or at shows where they're having what is assumed to be their birth name shouted at them. So it's
Mm.
like even if you are anonymous, you can't fully be anonymous. It's
Yeah,
impossible to be
yeah,
an
yeah.
anonymous artist.
Yeah.
And
Not
for
for
some
long.
musicians, there is that desire to be anonymous because they want their music to do the talking rather than their image and their
Mm.
identity. So it is a very much a difficult thing. That is,
Yeah.
how do you ever negotiate that? And what will happen in 10, 20 years time?
I
That
don't
is
know.
the
It's
thing.
just going to
Does
get
it does
worse,
that
isn't
get
it?
even worse? Does that mean we're going to have cameras in people's homes and that's how it's all going to work?
Mm.
How
Don't know.
does that work?
We'll have to see, I guess. It's a good job people like Tonic Music are around to help people navigate through it. I guess that's the point, isn't it? Um,
Absolutely.
if any of our listeners are listening to this, sort of suffering in silence with their mental health and stuff, do you have any advice as to what they should do?
The main advice is whenever requiring emergency or urgent care is always about the NHS. So in an
Right,
emergency,
yeah.
it's always about calling 999 or going to A&E. It's, A&E is not just for physical emergencies, it's also for mental health
Yeah,
emergencies.
right. Yeah.
If it's urgent but not an emergency, call 111, go to a GP, even if it's an out of hours GP surgery, particularly if it requires a diagnosis. But then for anyone working in music, anyone who's a music fan who requires, that kind of next step in terms of support, we're here, it's online, the services, majority of services free to access as well. It's a simple registration form, and then you get the consultation appointment. So it's about seeking that help.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fully confidential. it is about kind of seeking support. That is the key thing to do. And it's a real pick and mix of where do you go, who do you go to.
Mm,
But I would just say anyone who's interested in the services we offer, is take a look at the website, see what we offer, and see if that works for you is
yeah.
the key thing.
So if people
Um,
do want to find out more about where's just best place the website is the best place to go,
so
right?
you can Google Tonic Music. We should come up at the top, which would be really good. But our website is tonicmusic.co.uk. We're on
Mm.
all the social medias, well, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, under Tonic Music MH. So Tonic Music MH for mental health. We also have a YouTube page. That's where you'll find us. If you're at a music event and we happen to be there, we have a front of house mental health lounge. We will show tonic music. Again, we'll have one backstage. So this week we'll be at Lakefest, which is
Oh,
in
nice.
Gloucestershire, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
So we'll be there. Come over and talk to our staff. And also on the website, you'll see our email address, teamtonic@tonicmusic.co.uk. So there's plenty of ways to engage with us to find out what services we offer. I'm sure in the podcast publication you'll put our link as well, I would
I
imagine.
will indeed.
There we
I'll
go. Is what I'd
happily
like to
put that
hear.
in there.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's all great ways. I guess our main social media really is sort of Facebook and Instagram tends to be our
Mm.
main social media where we post regularly. And
All right.
definitely.
I wasn't going to ask you this question, but I think I'm going to give it a go because we ask this question to
Oh.
every guest we have on, but I think you know enough about 90s music to answer it. So if you could have been in any band in the 90s, who would it have been and
If I
why?
could have been in any band in the 90s,
Yeah.
oh, who would it have been if I could have been in any band? Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Any band in the 90s. Would it be one of my favorite bands? Would it not be?
That's the question.
That's a good question. That's a very, very good question. I would say, cool. Do you know, there's some really,
Yeah,
really good bands, isn't there?
there
And
is.
why would I be in them? I'm gonna go for bit of a cop out, but it would have meant that traveling
It's all
to
right.
my other band members would be much easier. I would have gone for
Yeah,
Blur, but
it's
the
a good answer.
reason is, it's not, I'm cheekily saying about the commute would have been a lot easier, but I
Yeah.
think if you look at the history of Blur, the way they're able to diversify with their albums, I think that's
Mm,
often forgotten about with Blur, that how they
yeah.
didn't do any dramatic changes of sounds,
No.
but were able to, there was quite a journey, and I think it would have been
Yeah,
quite fun
absolutely.
being part of the Blur versus Oasis in what
I
was that,
think you're right.
95? I think that would have been interesting.
Yeah, I think you're
But I
right.
think the other band as well, just because I think politically their songs are great, would be Mannix. I think that would have been
No,
really
we
interesting as
love a bit of
well.
the Mannix on the podcast.
They are a very much an underrated band. I still
Yeah,
feel they're very much
yeah,
underrated.
yeah.
And also they are, as I learn, big fans of the Chilean folk singer Victor Hara, who I'm a big fan
Is
of
that
as well.
right? Well, there you
So
go.
I reckon there had been good conversations there. But there was
Definitely.
many. I mean,
Well,
another
there
band
were
that are
many.
often forgotten about is Silverchair, who are an Australian band.
Oh, no,
They
I
were
love
Australian,
Silverchair.
yeah.
I talk about them all the time, but
I love, see, there we go. I mean, they were 15, were they 14, 15
yeah,
when
yeah,
they
yeah.
come out? Um, how an amazing, you know what I mean?
Uh,
Not
and
enough
Daniel
attention.
Johns, he's a good example. He's had his issues as well, hasn't
Oh,
he, old Daniel
absolutely.
Johns? Well,
Yeah.
ongoing, but yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Very interesting. There's Australia has some great 90s bands. They really,
yeah,
really
yeah,
did. They really, really did. Yeah, absolutely. I guess Silverchair would probably be
yeah.
top of the
Well,
90s, I would have thought.
all good answers. And I'm going to let you go because I've had you on for ages. I appreciate you spending so much time
It's
with
been
me.
great. Thank you so much.
But don't. I'm going to stop the recording, but don't go away just yet. And but thanks so much.
It's been great. That's been my favorite podcast I've done. I've done quite a few now.
So there we go, Jeordie Shenton from Tonic Music. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that one. What a lovely guy and what a great charity that is. So hopefully beneficial to some of you. Hope you enjoyed the interview. And you can find Tonic stands at various festivals. I think there might be at Shine On as well. So if you're at Shine On this year, look out for the Tonic music stand and go and say hello to Jeordie. He's a lovely guy, as you've seen and heard. If you are watching this, then please do give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and get involved in the comments. Like I said, Normal Services will review in a couple of weeks with all your 90s favourite artists. We're just taking a little break so that Dave can do whatever Dave needs to do. We are looking forward to bringing you some interviews with some really cool people from the 90s. So please don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, do all that stuff. And we'll catch you in episode 105 next week. That's it for this one. See you later.